Okay, we're here with Dr. Robert Fourdraine, who is with the Wisconsin Livestock Identification Council and also is the current chairman for NIAA, and we're at the NIAA conference in San Antonio. And Robert, wanted to catch up with you on some animal identification issues, and I know that you've worked in that area for a long time in Wisconsin, but also nationally, and wanted to maybe learn a little bit more about the Wisconsin program, but then also talk a little bit about the federal program as well. But if you can tell us a little bit about the consortium.
Yeah, the consortium was established in 2002. It's basically an organization, non-profit, that was established by the Wisconsin livestock industry. We have about a membership of 50 organizations that elect a board of 12 members, and our current chairman happens to be a dairy cooperative person. We've got all species around the table: equine, poultry, swine, and I think that's part of the uniqueness of WLIC, that we represent a wide segment of the industry. But we have the goal is basically to have a system in place in the state of Wisconsin that if there's a disease outbreak, that we can quickly respond to the disease outbreak and minimize the impact it has on the livestock industry as a whole.
Seems like there's been pretty good participation from producers in Wisconsin as well. There's a good awareness in the state that the identification and a traceability program can be beneficial to the producers.
That's correct. There's a couple of reasons. I mean, our industry is predominantly dairy. I mean, we have a very large dairy industry, and animal identification is very important to the dairy industry for herd management purposes anyway. The DHIA program, the genetics programs, they require a unique identifier for that animal so they can ID that animal, record production information. The nice thing about that is that for animal health purposes, I think most of our dairy industry is aware of the risks that are out there as far as diseases. We got tuberculosis still in this country in certain states. That can have a major impact on your state if you can't move animals. And being the dairy state, we do sell a lot of heifers out of state and move animals, and it would have a negative impact on your industry. So having the ability to build an ID and traceability system that works for herd management, but also for disease programs, that's been our focus, and a little bit different probably than the national program, where they've been very focused on the disease management side through state governments, while we've had the industry take the lead on animal ID and try to make connections with programs that are already out there in the industry and try to make it beneficial to the farmer for herd management as well.
Well, that sounds great. I did want to ask you, too, about the federal program, and I know that you've been closely involved with that over the years, going back really for quite some time, but USDA is currently working on their latest traceability plan, and I think we expect to see the proposed rule or final rule coming out in a short time frame here, and so just wanted to get some of your thoughts on what you've seen with your involvement there and some of the committees, and where you see that headed. And I know that it's all not completely clear, but whatever you can tell us.
Yeah, partially depends on each state you live in and the type of livestock that you keep. I think when we go back to the original proposal with NIS, it was going to be a very centralistic, nationally run program where states and industry were required to do certain things. With the changes that have been proposed now, I think USDA is going to a less technology savvy program that's probably going to require more manual data entry, which that probably increases that cost, but less upfront cost as far as the ID technology. That's one change. The second change is where that they learned from the previous approaches that individual states like to run their own program. Most producers are more comfortable with their state veterinarian versus somebody in Washington, D.C. So that's, the bottom line is that USDA will focus on the movements of animals between states. However, that will require each individual state to work with their livestock industry to say, what type of traceability program do we need to develop in our state? One, to meet the USDA requirements, but also to meet our own within state movement requirements. I think with the new framework, each state's going to have to bring their livestock industry together with their state veterinarians to figure out, what level of funding and what type of program do we want to put in place in our state, and that's really where this is going now. So, if you move animals between states, from the state of Wisconsin, if we move the dairy cow from Wisconsin to Texas, it's going to have an identifier on it. Either it's a RFID tag, it may be a panel tag, as long as there's an official ID number on it, or it may be the little metal clip tag that USDA says an official ID too. But the days where I could move that animal and say it has a tattoo and a breed registry form, they want to go away from that because it's not a permanent form of ID, and when that animal is 6-7 years older, that may not mean anything anymore at that point unless you have that piece of paper always follow that animal.
Right.
So I think trying to standardize some of the ID methods, but still allowing states the flexibility to do this, in a manner that is acceptable to their livestock industry. Again, it's going to be different for dairy, beef, pork, sheep, because the sheep, they already have a program, so I doubt you'll see any changes there. The swine industry, some minor ones, but the big one's going to be the beef cattle industry and dairy industry.
And as I understand it, there's a timeline for kind of phasing in some different aspects of the program, and some of it will start fairly soon, but before it really applies, or at least potentially could, but before it really applies to the vast majority of cattle that are shipped in commerce, it'll probably be at least another 3, 4, 5 years.
And the dairy industry, if the rule goes through and USDA does get the funding to implement this program, because they made it clear they will not proceed with any implementation unless there was funding to support the states. So assuming they get that, the dairy industry would be day one, while the beef cattle industry, the breeding herd, animals over 18 months sexually intact would be part of it, and then the bigger bulk of beef cattle would be several years later after an analysis of how does the program work with the initial group of animals.